It is fascinating how quickly society adapts to a miracle. Over the past couple of years, we have watched a massive cultural shift regarding weight loss. Suddenly, the impossible became possible. The endless struggle with willpower, the grueling diets, the constant mental math of calorie counting, all of it seemingly erased by a weekly injection. These GLP-1 medications have been hailed as absolute magic. But if you look closely, or more importantly, if you actually talk to the people taking them, the narrative of a effortless, sunshine-filled journey to thinness starts to crack. There is a shadow side to this miracle, isn't there? We are talking about the nausea, the bone-deep fatigue, and the sheer amount of time people are suddenly spending locked in their bathrooms.
That is the ultimate biological truth we always seem to forget. The human body does not do magic. It does accounting. And right now, millions of people are realizing that while these medications represent an absolute breakthrough in clinical obesity treatment, they come with a steep biological cost. You are essentially hacking an ancient evolutionary survival mechanism. You are telling a body that is wired to seek and store energy to suddenly stop wanting food. The results on the scale are undeniable, but we have to look at what we are calling clinical realism. The reality is that altering your metabolic pathways disrupts your entire digestive and energetic ecosystem. The question we need to be asking isn't just how to get the drug, but how to actually live with it. How do we manage this biological cost naturally, so that the intervention is actually sustainable?
Exactly. Because if the side effects make your day-to-day life miserable, the victory on the scale feels incredibly hollow. Let's start with the most immediate and universal complaint, the gut check, the nausea. I have heard people describe it as feeling like they just ate a massive Thanksgiving dinner, even when they haven't touched a single bite of food all day. It is this persistent, low-grade seasickness. What is actually happening mechanically in the body to cause that sensation?
It comes down to the primary mechanism of the medication itself. One of the main ways these drugs regulate appetite is by significantly slowing down gastric emptying. Imagine your stomach is a busy nightclub and the medication is a very strict bouncer who suddenly decides to only let one person out every 10 minutes. The food you eat literally stays in your stomach much longer than it normally would. This sends a prolonged signal of fullness to your brain, which is great for stopping you from overeating. But there is a catch. If you eat the wrong types of food, or too much at once, that food just sits in the warm environment of your stomach and begins to ferment. That fermentation produces gas, bloating, and that profound, inescapable nausea.
That makes so much sense, and it actually highlights a massive paradox. For years, the gold standard advice for anyone trying to lose weight or get healthy was to dramatically increase their fiber intake, eat more raw vegetables, load up on legumes, get those complex carbohydrates. But from what gut health experts are seeing in clinical practice, if you apply that traditional high-fiber rule while on a GLP-1, you might actually be making the nausea and bloating infinitely worse.
It is a perfect example of how the old rules do not apply to this new physiological state. High-fiber foods, particularly the dense, roughage-heavy diets common in many traditional Asian or plant-based eating styles, are incredibly hard to break down. When your digestion is operating at half speed, dumping a massive bowl of raw kale or heavy lentils into your stomach is a recipe for disaster. It is going to sit there like a brick. You actually have to titrate your fiber intake very carefully. But beyond adjusting the menu, the way people consume water is another huge trigger.
The hydration mistake. I see this constantly. People know they need water, so they forget to drink all morning, and then they try to chug a massive bottle right before or during a meal to catch up.
Which is the worst thing you can do when your gastric emptying is delayed. Think of your stomach capacity as a small, slow-draining funnel. If you dump a liter of water into it all at once, especially on top of food, it is going to overflow, and that overflow manifests as severe acid reflux and nausea. The natural, sustainable fix is what we call the drip irrigation method. Hydration is absolutely non-negotiable for managing side effects, but you have to sip it continuously throughout the day. And the same goes for food. The old paradigm of 3 large square meals a day has to be completely abandoned. The biology of your hunger has been fundamentally altered, so your eating habits must adapt. You have to transition to small, frequent, highly nutrient-dense meals.
It is almost like you have to relearn how to eat from scratch. And speaking of natural interventions, it is fascinating how we are pairing this cutting-edge, synthetic peptide therapy with ancient herbal remedies. I know a lot of clinicians are leaning heavily on ginger and peppermint to manage the gastrointestinal distress, simply because they soothe the GI tract without interfering with the medication's efficacy. It is a beautiful full-circle moment, where modern pharma necessitates traditional botanical medicine. But let's shift gears to the second major hurdle, which might actually be more debilitating than the nausea. I am talking about the profound exhaustion. People call it Ozempic fatigue. They are losing weight, but they feel like they have lost their spark, their drive, their basic life energy. Is this a direct chemical effect of the drug, or are people just inadvertently starving themselves into a stupor?
It is a compounding effect of both, but the starvation aspect is massive. When you are suddenly placed in a massive caloric deficit, which these drugs easily facilitate, your body panics. Evolutionarily, a sudden drop in calories signals a famine. Your body doesn't know you bought the medication at a pharmacy. It thinks the crops failed. So to keep you alive, it aggressively downregulates your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It makes you want to sit on the couch. It makes your eyelids heavy. It is trying to save energy. But there is a secondary, more insidious cause of this fatigue, and it has to do with the architecture of your sleep.
Right, because if you are eating very little, your blood sugar is naturally going to sit at a much lower baseline. And from a neurobiological perspective, we know that if your blood sugar dips too low in the middle of the night, your brain perceives it as a threat. It spikes your cortisol and adrenaline to force your liver to release glucose, which inevitably wakes you up or pulls you out of deep sleep. So you are not just tired from a lack of calories, you are fundamentally sleep deprived, even if you spent 8 hours in bed.
Precisely. Your sleep quality is quietly being shredded. And this is where we have to look at natural, behavioral protocols to fix the fatigue. You cannot just caffeinate your way out of this. First, you have to look at your electrolytes. These medications, combined with rapid weight loss, often cause the body to flush out sodium, potassium, and magnesium. When you are depleted of magnesium and salt, your muscles feel like lead, and your brain feels foggy. Simply adding a high-quality electrolyte mix to your daily water intake can sometimes feel like a light switch being flipped back on. It literally wakes up the electrical signaling in the brain and muscles.
And we also have to talk about circadian rhythms here. If your sleep architecture is compromised, you have to anchor your body clock using light. Getting outside and getting direct sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning is crucial. It is a well-documented protocol to reset your cortisol pulse and elevate early-day dopamine. If you are battling medically induced fatigue, you need every natural dopamine and cortisol advantage you can get. But there is another layer to this fatigue that terrifies me, and it leads us directly into the most dangerous long-term side effect of these drugs. If you are too exhausted to move, you are not just burning fat, you are burning muscle.
The skinny fat phenomenon. It is the dark secret of the rapid weight loss era. When you lose a massive amount of weight quickly without a strong stimulus to preserve lean tissue, up to 30 or 40% of the weight you lose can be muscle mass. Muscle is your metabolic engine. It is your armor against aging. If you lose your muscle, you might look smaller in clothes, but you are actually becoming metabolically frailer. Your resting metabolic rate plummets, which means the moment you stop the medication, or even just build up a tolerance to it, the fat is going to rebound with a vengeance.
Which is why prioritizing protein isn't just a suggestion, it is a biological imperative. Even if the medication makes you completely averse to food, even if the thought of a chicken breast makes your stomach turn, you have to find a way to hit your protein targets. You have to view protein as a prescription. And this ties directly into the necessity of resistance training. If the side effects, the nausea, the dizziness, the fatigue, are so severe that they are keeping you out of the gym, then the intervention is actually failing you in the long run.
That is a brilliant point, and it is something the top clinical obesity experts are becoming very vocal about. The goal of these medications is not to help you survive a state of starvation. The goal is to help you thrive, to build a healthier, more resilient body. If you are too sick to lift weights, you are doing it wrong. This is where the concept of microdosing or highly personalized dose titration comes into play. A lot of patients think that if they aren't on the maximum dose, they are failing. But if a slightly lower dose allows you to eat adequate protein, digest your food comfortably, and have the energy to engage in resistance training, your long-term body composition will be vastly superior.
It really forces us to look at the philosophy behind why we are losing weight in the first place. Are we doing this just to hit a specific number on a scale by next month? Or are we looking at longevity science? Because if you look at the markers for living a long, independent, healthy life, muscle mass and strength are at the very top of the list. What is the point of shedding 50 pounds of fat today if you also shed the muscle required to catch yourself from a fall in 10 years? We have to zoom out and look at the deep biological cost of short-term vanity.
It requires a profound shift in mindset. You have to stop viewing the medication as a magical eraser that absolves you of having to care for your body. Instead, you have to view the medication as a powerful tool. And like any powerful tool, it requires a very specific user manual. You cannot run a high-performance engine without oil, and you cannot run a GLP-1 altered body without precise hydration, aggressive protein intake, electrolyte management, and structured sleep hygiene.
And we have to warn people against the inevitable wave of predatory marketing that is already flooding the internet. Every time there is a new medical trend, the supplement industry swoops in. We are already seeing miracle pills claiming to instantly erase GLP-1 side effects. But as we have discussed today, the side effects are a direct result of the mechanical and physiological changes in the body. You cannot out-supplement delayed gastric emptying. You have to manage it through evidence-based lifestyle integration.
Exactly. Do not fall for the marketing. Stick to the clinical realism. Be incredibly patient with your body as it navigates this massive chemical shift. Eat slowly. Drink your water methodically. Prioritize your sleep. And most importantly, if the side effects cross the line from annoying to extreme, you must communicate with a clinical professional. Do not try to tough out severe medical symptoms just to lose an extra pound.
It is about respect. Respecting the profound complexity of the human body, even when we are using advanced science to alter its behavior. These medications are a bridge, not a destination. And that actually brings up a fascinating, slightly terrifying question that millions of people are eventually going to have to face. What happens when you cross the bridge? What happens when you reach your goal weight and you decide you do not want to be tethered to a weekly injection for the rest of your natural life?
That is the ultimate frontier of this entire medical revolution, the post-medication landscape. Because the moment that synthetic peptide leaves your system, the bouncer leaves the nightclub. The gastric emptying speeds back up. The appetite returns, often with a vengeance. If you haven't used the time on the medication to fundamentally rebuild your habits, your gut health, and your muscle mass, the biological rubber band is going to snap back hard.
It is a haunting thought, but an absolutely necessary one. We are essentially living through the largest mass metabolic experiment in human history, and the exit strategy is just as important as the entry. That is exactly what we are going to dive into next time, the post-medication plan. How to prepare your body, your environment, and your mind to keep the weight off if you ever decide to put the syringe down. Until then, listen to your body, protect your muscle, and take it one slow sip of water at a time.